We talked about the best, let's talk about the worst. As much as I love Doctor Who, they can't get it perfect every time. So I'm going to look at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to villains. Now, because when I did my list of recurring villains, that pretty much covered all the recurring villains of the current era, this list is going to be made up entirely of one-timers of the modern era. We got a lot of junk to scrape through, so let's get moving. Number 10, the mighty Jagrafess of the Holy Hydra Maxarodinfo. This one just kind of becomes the epitome of insert monster here. He's got no real personality. The editor's a much more effective villain in the context of that episode. This was just the bigger, scary thing because a dude in a suit apparently isn't intimidating enough. It just doesn't have a lot of personality. It's not particularly scary. It's a mouth on a ceiling. It roars, it melts. They move along, and so shall we. Number 9, the Siren. The Siren might have worked better if there wasn't such reliable tropes in terms of how Doctor Who deals with what appears to be a mythological or supernatural creature. It's aliens. It's always aliens. That's the way it works. So whenever Doctor Who encounters something that fits into mythology, like a siren into the mythology of pirates, then we know it's not going to be what it appears to be. It's going to turn out to be something alien, which is exactly what it does. I mean, for the story purposes, it functions well enough. The notion of the black dot and then it comes for you, that's kind of nifty, all things considered, but it's just the way the episode is constructed, it was never going to be particularly scary, and it killed Rory for, what, the 4th time already? It's nothing original about this thing. Number 8, Max Capricorn. This guy is just so cartoonish, and I mean that in the most literal sense. He's like a villain out of Captain Planet. You know, between the look and the head in the box and the sneer and the tooth always glints. I mean, I get that they made a joke out of that, and that's kind of funny, I guess, but it's just so over the top and so overblown. And I can't for the life of me figure out why he's on that ship. I mean, he's paid all the right people to make sure the thing crashes. Why is he on there himself? It makes absolutely no sense, so he's an idiot on top of everything else. Number 7, the Vespa form. Now, I'm actually fine with this thing for the time in which it is in human form, and its structure within the story works fine, but a giant wasp? Really? Is that all that we could come up with? I mean, did the monster designer, were they just out the week that thing got written? So we just need something really basic. Giant wasp? Sure, giant wasp. What? It's like a placeholder. It's the sort of thing that you write down until you think of something better, but they never came back. And the fact that it's a wasp just doesn't feed into the story. I mean, I'd let it go if somehow the notion of a wasp is somehow tied to Agatha Christie's books, if like wasps were a recurring motif in her stories, or why? Number 6, the Saturnine. Here we're dealing with the exact same problem that we had with the Siren, which is that you introduce a mythological creature, vampires in this case, and we immediately know, well, it's not what it looks like, so what's it actually going to be? In this case, it's fish people. I mean, even when they're looking kind of human in the teeth, I mean, it's an okay look, I suppose. Now, I've seen this before, and I've seen it done better. I've seen Doctor Who do it better. Doctor Who did its own spin on vampires way back in the classic era. There was no need to do this sort of thing again with fish people. Fish people? I mean, they couldn't have even been bats, at least. At least that makes sense with the vampire comparison. Nah, fish. Sure, fish. Why not? Number 5, the Timebug. Now this one, some people are going to get upset that it's ranking as far into a list of worse as it is, because as far as functionally and what it does for the story, it's fine. It completely kickstarts the story, and I'm not as big a fan of Left Turn as some people are, but it's a fine story and there's nothing wrong with it. But again, I've got the same problem with this thing that I had with the Vespa form. Big beetle. That's it? Because the thing is, and they show it in like these tiny glimpses, and the way that they shoot it, they could have come up with something really creepy. Because when you get just tiny little, then it should have been that sense of, what is that? I don't even know what I'm looking at. But when you go, oh, giant beetle. I mean, that's a little freaky, sure. But given the way the thing is shot and the way the story is structured, they had the opportunity to really go wild and go out of the box and come up with something genuinely disturbing that we hadn't seen before, and they just stuck a big beetle on her back. Lazy. Number 4, the hand robots. Now this is another one where it just has to do with the small ways that they just fall apart. As far as the overall episode, I love this episode. The Girl Who Waited is one of my favorites. But these things, design-wise, they're okay, but they are such a joke to be taken out seriously that one shuts down because he has a painting busted over his head. Like, not even the painting frame, not the wooden bit, just the canvas. It's just a joke how insanely easy these things are to take out. And I understand they're not built for combat. I get that. But it's like they're not even built to be able to bump into a wall accidentally. I think it actually would have made the story even better than it already is if they were a little more difficult to take out. Number 3, Lazarus. Now this is one, I know I said before, really lazy designs. I complained about the Vesper form, I complained about the Timebug. Well, this is a case where they got a little too creative and it just kind of went off the rails. This thing falls apart for a couple reasons. The first is, given that the premise is that this is some sort of earlier what humans could have evolved into, it's too outlandish. The idea that something like that is locked away in our DNA, I'm having a hard time buying that. They just went too big, too monstrous, too not even vaguely resembling human. And then the CGI effects don't really back it up either. I complain when the design is too basic and I feel like they weren't creative. They got really creative with this, I'll give them that, but it still doesn't work. Number 2, everybody's favorite, the Absorbaloff. I don't know what there is to say about this thing. I mean, it was designed by a kid as a contest, and you can tell it's a very kid idea, but I hate loving monsters just like everybody else. I understand what it was trying to do, but it was goofy and mishandled. It doesn't balance its elements well. The jokes come off like they're making fun of fans rather than having a laugh with them. Just the whole episode's a mess. And this goofy creature, it's just the icing on a very not tasty cake. But what could possibly be worse than the Absorbaloff? That's what everyone says is the worst monster in the history of Doctor Who. Well, I got one that I think did it even worse. Number 1, The Wire. This thing just falls down for me from the word go. The concept, the execution, everything. I mean, the only thing that's vaguely creepy about this is the resulting people with no face. That's a little creepy, but it's never really made especially clear what it is that's happening to them. And even though the result to the people is creepy, the wire itself is not creepy. It's just this woman on TV going, "Feed me!" 50 damn times in a row. Like, that's the only thing she says. It hurts to watch. I don't know this actress particularly well. I don't know her work. I feel like she was probably hamstringed by the fact that she was obviously just stuck in a box with one camera. How much can you possibly give under those situations? Well, she shot for the moon and shot herself in the foot. The thing could have had this sort of omniscient feeling if it was like moving from TV to TV or somehow traveling in the radio signals or through the electrical cords, give it a more sense of presence, but it's a TV and it sucks your face. While going, "Feed me!" Oh, shut up. I mean, the Absorbaloff was dumb, but at least you can go, it was created by a kid. What's your excuse on this one? Really? So there we go. Bottom of the barrel, the worst Doctor Who monsters of the current era. What do you think is the worst monster or villain that the current era of Doctor Who has come up with? Is it on my list? Did I get the ranking right? Did I miss one completely that you think is actually worse than any of the ones I talked about? Whatever is the case, drop something down in the comments. We'll talk about it. And until next time, this council is adjourned.